Welcome back. Over the next several days after Fred had returned to Chicago from his meeting in Minneapolis, Sandra was left in her hospital room to wonder what could have happened between her and Fred had she not been in the accident. Eventually, she returned home herself to Detroit, where the goal was to resume her rehab. During this time, Sandra also wanted to continue the unfinished business she had in Minneapolis prior to the accident, and that was to somehow be with Fred. Sandra still had her job at Faith Methodist, having taken over from her previous supervisor, Maggie, a while back. But just as Maggie trained Sandra before she left the position, Sandra did the same for her assistant after Maggie had departed. Fortunately for Sandra, her assistant was an able replacement for her while being away from the job stemming from the accident. Sandra was in a dark place where the accident nearly took her life and left her with a long period of rehab. That dark place included a lack of spiritual maturity, as evidenced by her continued interest in Fred. With Sandra's devious nature apparently unaffected by her misfortune, she planned to continue her pursuit of Fred, while gradually resuming her connections with Maggie's parents. She certainly had a conniving spirit, but her plans to be with Fred would have to be placed on hold for a few months during her physical therapy. Sandra's rehab involved being in a wheelchair to assist her mobility. Unlike Matthew, it would not be a permanent situation. She would walk, but only on a limited basis with crutches. Recuperating in her apartment, she believed that in a few weeks she would be back on the job at Faith Methodist. During the time of Sandra's rehab, she anticipated getting a lot of rest and watching TV. Sandra's friend Missy also would help her get established in her recovery efforts. Sandra could use all the help she could get while largely being confined to her apartment. She was only a few days back at her apartment when she started to feel severe cramping in her abdomen. Missy had visited Sandra the previous evening and said she would continue to assist her in her rehabilitation. Sandra's efforts on getting better had to do with her legs regaining the strength they had before the accident. She did not realize that the pain she had also was a result of the accident. The pain was so intense that she needed Missy's assistance more and more. Late one night, after a couple of weeks after her return home from Minneapolis, the pain that Sandra had was unbearable. So she gave Missy a call. Missy picked up the phone and answered, starting the conversation. Hello?
Hello, Mincy. This is Sandra. I hope you're fine.
Oh, hello, Sandra. I'm okay. But how are you doing?
Not too good, Mincy. I've been having these cramps in my stomach, and they are hurting me so bad. I feel like I need to go to the hospital to get things checked out.
Don't say another word, Sandra. I'll be right over to take you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mincy. I didn't want to inconvenience you.
Don't worry about that. You're not inconveniencing me. I'm just here with Matthew, but he can take care of himself. I'll be over within an hour. With that assurance from Mincy, the conversation between her and Sandra ended. Of course, Mincy made sure that Matthew would be fine while she was away. She said to her husband, "Hey, Matthew, Sandra called and has a medical emergency. I'm going to take her to the hospital. I know it's late, but I think it's serious. Will you be okay here alone?" "Sure thing, Mincy. I'll be fine. You just go and get Sandra straight, Matthew said back to her. With those words of encouragement from Matthew, soon Mincy would take off for Detroit. Mincy arrived at Sandra's apartment ready to take her to the Detroit hospital recommended by the doctor who had treated her after the accident back in Minneapolis. Mincy got out of her car and walked the short distance to Sandra's front door. She rang the front doorbell. Then Sandra answered.
Hello, Mincy. Now that was quick.
Hello, Sandra. As you can see, I'm here. It doesn't take very long to get here. Traffic was light at this late hour, and I was able to speed a little bit.
Now, Mincy, I wouldn't want you to get a ticket, but thank you so much for helping me. Oh, just don't stand there. Come on in. This place is a mess, though, but I just haven't had a chance to clean up. Go ahead and sit down, and I won't be long before we can take off.
Thanks, Sandra. You always make me feel so welcome when I come over to your house. You know you've always been a good guest.
Oh, Mincy, you always manage to make me feel so special. But it's only an apartment. I just look forward to the day when I'm able to get a house. Maybe not like what you and Matthew have, because you have such a nice place over there in Flint. I'll just be happy having a house of my very own. It's just me, you know, so a small one will do. But anyway, let me get a few items and I'll be ready. Oh, these cramps are acting up again.
Are you okay, Sandra?
I think I'm all right, Mincy. Like I told you on the phone, I've just been having these cramps in my stomach, and it hurts so bad. But at least it's not all the time. It kind of comes and goes. You know what I mean?
Not really. I've never really had that experience. But stay as strong as you can, Sandra. Anyway, once you're ready, we'll get to the hospital, and they'll be able to check you out. And listen, don't worry about your apartment being a mess. Just go ahead and get what you need, and I'll be right here when you're ready. Sandra did return, and they both were off to make the short trip to the hospital. Sandra took all the records she received back at the Minneapolis hospital when she was first treated after the accident. As they rode together on their way to the hospital at such a late hour, Sandra started to think about telling Mincy that she had lied about having a sister in Minneapolis. But she decided not to do it. Her thoughts went from being truthful to Mincy to where her focus was on the pain she had and to deal with it as soon as possible.
Well, I know I should fess up and tell Mincy about my feelings for Fred, but I won't worry about that now. I'm in Detroit and Fred is in Chicago. I just need to see the doctor so I can learn what's wrong with me.
After a little while, Sandra left her own thoughts and asked Mincy, who was continuing to drive to the hospital.
How far away are we, Mincy?
Don't worry, Sandra. We'll be there soon. I'd say in less than about 10 minutes. After Mincy had answered Sandra's question, they soon arrived at the hospital. Sandra was so nervous. She thought about what the doctors would find out, what was bothering her. Before her current crisis, Sandra would not go to the doctor unless she absolutely had to. But now her pain was so intense that she had no choice. Sandra felt for the first time that someone other than herself would be in control of her future. In her estimation, that would be the doctors who would soon attend to her. Finally, they had arrived at the hospital. After formally being admitted, Sandra waited patiently sitting in the lobby with Mincy by her side. Only a short time had lapsed when an attendant came to them and said, "Miss Hughes, we're ready for you. Just follow me." Sandra then said to her friend accompanying her,
Mincy, I'll leave my purse with you, and hopefully I'll be out soon.
You go ahead, Sandra. I'm sure they'll take good care of you. And yeah, your purse will be fine right here. As Sandra was seen by the physician, Missy waited for her in the lounge area. Sandra went through a battery of tests, and after an extended period, the doctors finally came out to the reception area and approached Missy.